Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Danny Gallagher strolled through the lively company picnic alongside his teenage daughter, Lucy, greeting everyone he passed with a warm smile and light conversation. A skilled maintenance worker, Danny was a respected figure at the Ferguson Manufacturing Company, known for his expertise in keeping the factory's intricate machinery running smoothly. To Danny, the factory wasn't just a workplace. It was a tight-knit community of over 400 employees, many of whom he considered friends. Today, they had gathered for the company's annual summer picnic, a beloved tradition. Held every third Saturday in July at a local amusement park, the picnic was the company's way of thanking its hard-working staff. The event offered something for everyone. Children delighted in rides, sweets, and pony rides, while adults played volleyball, tossed horseshoes, and enjoyed time by the pool. Food and drinks flowed freely, creating an atmosphere of camaraderie and relaxation. As they walked, Danny leaned toward Lucy. "I'm sorry you have to witness this," he said, nodding toward a pavilion where Edgar Remington, the company's new chief operating officer, held court. "You can wait in the car if you'd rather not see how this unfolds." Lucy shook her head resolutely. "No way. Mom will spin this to make you the villain. I need to see it with my own eyes." Danny gave her a small nod, acknowledging her determination, and headed toward the pavilion. Lucy quietly moved to the back of the crowd, positioning herself near her mother, Mandy, who was seated next to Remington. He was delivering a bombastic speech about boosting productivity and cutting costs, drawing mixed reactions from the small audience. Danny's eyes briefly met those of Mrs. Agnes Ferguson, seated off to the side. The elderly matriarch of the Ferguson family had overseen the company's transition after the sudden death of her husband, William Ferguson, the previous winter. Under William's steady leadership, the company had thrived, doubling its output and profitability. Danny had fond memories of working under him, starting right out of high school. Now, with Edgar in charge, the company felt adrift, and Danny was deeply concerned. Danny approached Mandy with a soft invitation. "Want to join me for a drink and a volleyball game? It's a picnic after all." Mandy glanced at Edgar before responding frostily. "We're discussing important matters, Danny. Maybe you should spend time with the guys from the floor." Edgar smirked, cutting in, "Yeah, Gallagher, go grab a beer and toss some horseshoes. We're busy here." Danny's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice measured. "This isn't about work. It's a family picnic. I'm asking to speak with my wife." Edgar's grin widened. "I already told you, Gallagher, we're busy. Mandy, tell him to move along." Mandy shifted uncomfortably but echoed Edgar. "Danny, maybe you should go enjoy yourself." The condescension stung, but Danny stayed composed. "Mandy," he said firmly, "this is the last time I'll ask. Come with me." Her voice turned icy. "I'm staying here. Go have fun." Edgar laughed, his mockery clear. "Yeah, Gallagher. Scram." Danny's patience broke. "You're a pompous fool, Remington," he said, his voice calm but sharp. "You're driving this company into the ground faster than anyone imagined." Remington shot to his feet. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," Danny replied, unflinching. "And I've got plenty more to say if you need clarification." A murmur spread through the crowd. Flustered, Edgar tried to regain control. "You must be drunk, Gallagher. I'll let it slide this time, but leave. Now." "I haven't had a drink all day," Danny countered, "and I'm not going anywhere." Edgar's face darkened with anger. "You're fired!" Danny smirked. "Good luck making that stick. You can't handle me without security, and there's none here." The tension crackled as the standoff escalated. Mandy interjected, her tone pleading. "Danny, stop! Edgar, he's just stressed. Let it go." Edgar sneered. "Sure. Stressed because he's footing the bill for your new house, Mandy. Tough break for the guy." Danny's fists clenched. "The only thing stressing me out is resisting the urge to knock you flat." Edgar stepped back but tried to maintain his swagger. "Leave now, Gallagher. You're finished." Mandy turned to Danny, her expression hard. "Don't bother coming home until you've apologized." "That won't be a problem," Danny shot back, spinning on his heel. As he walked away, A man approached Mandy, handing her legal papers. Without stopping to watch her reaction, Danny reached his truck, fishing for his keys when Lucy's voice called out behind him. "Dad, I need to stay with Mom for now," Lucy said, her voice steady but concerned. "It seems like you were prepared for anything today. Did you plan for someone to bring your truck so you wouldn't have to leave with her?" "I did," Danny replied candidly. "Your mom tipped her hand with that scheme about buying a new house and expecting me to split the mortgage. I suspected Remington had something to do with it, and now it's obvious. She's not the woman I married all those years ago, and definitely not someone I'd choose to marry now. No matter what I do, it's never enough for her. She keeps pressuring me to pick up more overtime or land a higher-paying job. I make more than enough as it is," Danny added firmly, "especially considering how much she brings home. I'm not going to waste my best years being ordered around by a guy like Remington, or by your mom." "It sounds like your mind's made up," Lucy observed, her usual straightforwardness on display. "For what it's worth, I get it. Remington doesn't respect you, and neither does Mom. You don't deserve that." "Thanks for understanding," Danny said, his tone softening. "I've already found a new place to live and start a new job next week. Once I've settled in, I'll fill you in on the details. Until then, your mom might need some extra support for the next few days." "She probably will," Lucy agreed. "Connie Dawson and Margie Olson were trying to console her earlier. I should get back and be there for her. Watching everything unfold today wasn't easy, but at least I saw it for myself. Now she can't spin the story to me." "You were ready to stand up to Remington, weren't you? He looked genuinely shaken," Lucy said with a wry grin. "Maybe from your perspective," Danny replied with a smirk as he climbed into his truck. "Fortunately, it didn't come to that. Take care of your mom, kiddo." Mandy spent a full 30 minutes crying in the restroom after being served the divorce papers. Lucy stayed close by, though her demeanor lacked the kind of sympathy Mandy clearly hoped for. As they walked to the car, Mandy forced polite smiles at everyone they passed, though she couldn't shake the feeling that some were quietly reveling in her distress. "Your father really outdid himself today," Mandy muttered bitterly once they were driving down the highway. "He's setting himself up for disaster, you know. He'll lose his job and his house all because of his pride. The irony is, if he had real pride, he'd be making more money by now." Lucy didn't hesitate to respond. "He's proud enough to show up for every single one of my softball and basketball games, every school event, and anything else I'm involved in. My friends think he's the best dad ever. Why would you leave us to listen to some loudmouth show off how smart he thinks he is?" "He's my boss," Mandy defended herself. "He wanted to discuss ideas with the team, and since I'm in charge of marketing, I had to be there. It was actually productive, until your dad decided to blow everything up." "At a picnic?" Lucy shot back. "Even I know work has no place at a picnic. Remington hijacked everyone's time when they just wanted to relax." "Your father's been filling your head," Mandy snapped, her irritation growing. "You're too young to understand how the real world works. Success takes hard work, and your dad's not exactly famous for that. He's all about taking it easy and having fun." "Funny, that's exactly what Remington said to Dad," Lucy replied with biting sarcasm. "It sounds like you agree with him." "Well, everyone knows your father refuses to put in extra hours," Mandy retorted. "If he worked harder, we could afford a better house, maybe even one with a pool." "How did Remington find out about your plan for Dad to cover half the mortgage on a new house?" Lucy asked sharply. Mandy hesitated. "I might have mentioned it briefly. I don't remember the details, but it's possible I brought it up. Remington is a financial expert after all." "An expert with no sense of professionalism, apparently," Lucy shot back. "He showed no respect for Dad today." "Maybe your father didn't earn it," Mandy countered. "Remington values responsibility, and your dad's not exactly the poster child for that." "Dad earned respect when he stood up to him," Lucy argued. "Remington was so scared he fell out of his chair. I'm proud of Dad for not letting himself be humiliated." "It was absurd," Mandy snapped. "Your father was completely out of line, and Remington handled it like a professional." "Maybe he wouldn't have lost his temper if Remington hadn't provoked him," Lucy said firmly. "He tried to humiliate Dad and you went along with it. That's why he finally snapped." Well, it's fortunate things didn't go further, Mandy replied, her tone frosty. Edgar's in great shape. He spends plenty of time at the gym. Good thing he backed off, Lucy shot back. Why did Dad have to serve you divorce papers in such a public way? Your father planned the whole thing, Mandy said bitterly. It takes time to prepare legal papers and hire someone to serve them. That's true, Lucy acknowledged. He must have been working on it for a while, just like finding a new place to live and starting a new job. He's really leaving, isn't he? Mandy asked, more to herself than to Lucy. He's had enough of Remington, and he's not exactly thrilled with you either, Lucy said bluntly. And he didn't want the new house in the first place. You decided that on your own. Stop being so naive about money and relationships, Mandy snapped. I'm respected in this community, and success is important. Just because I earn more than your father doesn't mean I should foot the bill for everything while he wastes time golfing and fishing. Dad never complains about how much you spend, Lucy shot back. I've been shopping with you. I know exactly how much you spend in a single day. Why shouldn't he enjoy his hobbies? Mandy could only glare at her daughter, stunned into silence. Mandy retorted sharply, Maybe because I'm footing the bill for everything. She continued, her tone edged with frustration. Plenty of my friends' moms don't even work. They spend their days shopping, getting massages, and golfing without earning a single dollar. Is that fair? Absolutely. They gave up their careers to prioritize their families, Mandy argued. It's a husband's duty to ensure his wife lives comfortably. Lucy knew better than to argue when her mother dug her heels in. Over time, she'd learned a subtler approach, introduce ideas like seeds, letting them take root and grow. For now, all she could do was wait and see if her latest suggestion would bloom or wither. Lucy changed the subject abruptly. So, is Remington your boyfriend? You two seem pretty close. What? Of course not. Edgar is a complete bachelor, Mandy clarified. He dates stunning women and isn't remotely interested in me. Sounds like you might be interested in him, though, Lucy teased. Just don't rush into anything. People might think you were seeing him while you were still with Dad. I'm not interested in Edgar or anyone else, Mandy said with finality. I'm not dating for a long time, if ever. That's assuming your father and I even go through with the divorce. He could come to his senses, apologize, maybe even beg for forgiveness. Lucy stared at her mother in disbelief. Are you serious? You and Remington obviously like each other, and Dad isn't going to apologize? He didn't even do anything wrong. Humiliating me in public wasn't wrong, Mandy shot back. How can you take his side? Doesn't all this drama embarrass you? Lucy shrugged. What's embarrassing is you skipping Dad's picnic invite just to sit and listen to Remington's endless stories. As they pulled into the driveway, Mandy noticed Danny's garage door was wide open. The usual clutter of tools, outdoor gear, and sports equipment, golf clubs, kayaks, camping supplies, was gone. Only the lawn mower and some neatly arranged gardening tools remained. He's really gone, Mandy murmured as she got out of the car. She stepped into the kitchen, scanning the house. Aside from his clothes, Danny had left almost everything behind. The living room furniture and even the bedroom set were untouched. Well, at least he left the pricey stuff, Mandy said wryly. Let's see if he comes back for it. I don't think he will, Lucy replied. He never liked the furniture anyway, especially after you gave his favorite chair to your cousin. That old eyesore didn't match anything, Mandy protested. It had to go. Lucy folded her arms. He told you it was his favorite and asked to keep it. You told him to get over it and even banned him from sitting on the furniture in his work clothes. Remember how he had to drag a kitchen chair into the living room to watch TV? Mandy exhaled heavily. Of course I noticed. That was just Danny being stubborn, trying to guilt-trip me. I know his games. Lucy nodded slightly. Yeah, you do. We'll be fine even if your father doesn't come crawling back, Mandy said, though a note of uncertainty crept into her voice. I make enough for us to live well. We don't need him. Funny, Lucy said, smirking. You used to tell him he needed to make more money. Now I'm confused. I just wanted him to aim higher, Mandy said, almost to herself. I wanted to feel proud of him. Maybe the divorce is for the best, Lucy suggested. You don't seem to like each other anymore. And honestly, Remington seems into you." Mandy's expression hardened. "Does it bother you that you'd be living with one parent?" Lucy shrugged again. "Mom, I've basically been living with just you for the past year. Dad still spends time with me, takes me to my games, and goes camping and fishing. It's fine." With that, Lucy disappeared into her room, leaving Mandy standing in the hallway, lost in thought. She had always been the one to shoulder the responsibilities, earning the income, enforcing rules, and making sacrifices. Her demanding job as the marketing director at Ferguson Buffers left little room for personal time, but it provided for the family. Still, it stung to feel her efforts were unappreciated by both Danny and Lucy. Meanwhile, Danny was adjusting to a new chapter in his life. He had relocated 34 miles away to a secluded campground where he took a job as an all-around handyman and occasional guide. The role offered better pay and included a modest 2-bedroom cabin. His days were filled with physical labor, repairing equipment, fixing plumbing, and leading rafting expeditions. The fresh air and solitude gave him clarity, though he wrestled with loneliness. He missed Lucy deeply, and to his surprise he found himself thinking of Mandy as well. Despite their differences, she remained as striking as ever, and it didn't surprise him that someone like Remington would be drawn to her. But their marriage was undeniably over. To Mandy, he had become a burden rather than a partner. Still, Danny worried about the impact their failed relationship might have on Lucy. He hoped she would grow to value mutual respect in her future partnerships. Over time, his work helped him rebuild his confidence and fitness. Lucy noticed the changes whenever they spent time together, and Danny felt pride in his transformation. One warm summer weekend, Mandy's sleek BMW pulled into the campground. Danny was assisting 2 women with rafting gear when she arrived to drop Lucy off for her visit. As Mandy stepped out of the car, composed and poised as ever, Danny couldn't help but wonder what path their lives would take next. Lucy leapt out of the car and hurried to her father, wrapping him in a warm hug. "Wow, Dad, you look so fit and tan. Have shirts become optional for you now?" she teased with a grin. Danny chuckled and hugged her back. "Only when I'm eating," he joked. Then, turning to introduce the 2 women standing nearby, he said, "Lucy, meet Kim and Lisa. They're staying here too. We're about to head out for some river rafting and you're coming along." Lucy glanced at the 2 stunning blondes, who were dressed in shorts and halter tops that emphasized their athletic builds. "I don't want to disrupt your plans," Lucy said, picking up on the easy camaraderie between her father and his companions. She couldn't help but wonder about their dynamic. "Nonsense," Kim said with a bright smile. "We have plenty of space, 2 two-seater kayaks and some tubing kayaks. There's room for you and we'd love to have you." Lisa chimed in cheerfully. "If you didn't pack a swimsuit, we've got extras." Lucy laughed. "Thanks, but I brought one. I'm not sure I could pull off the kind of tops you 2 wear, though. They seem tricky to keep in place. You both look amazing." Lisa grinned mischievously. "Don't worry, we usually lose the tops pretty quickly anyway." Lucy shot her father a playful look. "I doubt Dad would let me join in on that. He's kind of old school." Danny smirked. "You've got that right, but I don't think you'll get the chance to test that theory today." He added with a wink, "She's only 15, Lisa." Lucy rolled her eyes. "So, I guess it's okay once I'm 18? Danny laughed. "By then, you'll be calling your own shots. Just make sure you're safe and keep any pictures far away from the internet." Their light-hearted exchange was cut short when Mandy, Lucy's mother, arrived. "I don't think she should go if it means being around people who might strip down," Mandy said sharply. "In fact, Danny, you shouldn't either." Kim raised an eyebrow and addressed Mandy coolly. "You must be the ex-wife who traded him in. For the record, Danny's a perfect gentleman, and if it helps, we'll keep our tops on." Mandy's gaze lingered on Danny. He looked different, more confident and undeniably handsome. His tanned skin, broad shoulders, and relaxed charm caught her off guard. Had he always looked like this, or was she only noticing now? Kim and Lisa leaned into Danny casually, their confidence palpable and slightly provocative. "Don't worry," Kim said lightly. "We'll take good care of Danny and Lucy." Mandy's irritation deepened as she recalled Danny mentioning Edgar, her boss. She suspected he'd shared a skewed version of events with these women. The thought stung, but she turned and headed back to her car. As she drove to work, Mandy's thoughts wandered to Edgar. His behavior had changed since the company picnic. He'd become more touchy, more complimentary, and increasingly critical of Danny. Her co-workers had also started gossiping about her relationship with Edgar, especially after the divorce papers were filed. Edgar was undeniably successful and charming, but Mandy had never considered breaking her vows for him. Danny, despite his lack of ambition, had been a good husband, a devoted father, loyal and respectful of her family. Her father's scathing words after the divorce announcement replayed in her mind. "What were you thinking?" her father had asked angrily. "This man supported you through school, treated you like royalty, and is the best father I've ever seen. Was he too nice for you? Did you lose respect for him because he always put you first?" Mandy had tried to explain. "I just wanted him to do more, to be more. He's smart, capable, and strong, but he's not living up to his potential. I wanted someone Lucy and I could look up to." Her father shook his head in frustration. "Danny already is someone to be proud of. The problem is, you couldn't see it." Lucy had chimed in, standing up for her dad. "I'm proud of him, Mom. My friends think he's the coolest dad ever. Don't drag me into this." Mandy had tried to justify her decision. He could accomplish so much if he just tried harder. Her father sighed deeply. "And yet, you're the one pushing him away. There are plenty of women who would be thrilled to have someone like Danny." Lucy had added softly, "You should see how other moms look at him." As Mandy drove, those words weighed heavily on her. Had she been so fixated on what Danny wasn't that she'd failed to appreciate what he was? Single mothers had grown increasingly fond of her ever since learning about the divorce between her and her mother, Lucy mused. "I'm always the one doing the heavy lifting for this family, but somehow everyone still thinks Danny is the golden child," Mandy vented in frustration. "I bet if we were stuck in a rundown shack living off ramen, people wouldn't think he's so great anymore. But Danny makes more money than me, that's the real difference." Her father chimed in, reflecting on their past struggles. "Your mom and I raised 3 kids and overcame every obstacle together. She never complained, even when we barely scraped by. She stood by me through my mistakes, including the ones that hit us hard financially. Marrying her was the luckiest day of my life." "But I'm not Mom," Mandy shot back. "I want more than just scraping by. I want a husband I can admire," she said, acknowledging how deeply her parents loved each other. At the campsite, Lisa and Kim dropped Danny's hands the moment Mandy walked away, dissolving into laughter afterward. Lucy stared at them, confused. "Kim and I are in a committed relationship," Lisa explained. "We didn't even go sailing with your dad yesterday. Honestly, the only time he could have seen our daughters was if he was peeking through our window last night." Lucy smirked. "You really gave your mom a run for her money earlier. She doesn't seem like someone ready to go through with a divorce, does she?" Lisa added with a chuckle. "Your dad's quite the looker for his age, and your mom's stunning too. But what's on her mind? Danny's a catch." Later, Mandy arrived at Ferguson Buffers for a Saturday meeting, only to find the parking lot nearly empty, with Edgar's car the sole vehicle present. "Where is everyone?" she asked as she entered. "I canceled the meeting last night and told everyone," Edgar replied nonchalantly. "I figured this would be a perfect chance for us to spend some one-on-one time." "This isn't the place for personal conversations," Mandy said, her irritation clear. "I rearranged my whole Saturday morning for a meeting that didn't even happen. I've got a lot to do at home." Edgar leaned in, undeterred. "You mentioned your daughter is with her dad for the weekend. I thought it'd be a good opportunity for us to connect. By the way, I've booked us a room for a conference in Chicago in 2 weeks. We can save on company costs by sharing, Friday through Monday. It'll be like a romantic work getaway." Stunned, Mandy stammered, "That's sudden. I need some time to think." "Take all the time you need," Edgar said smoothly. "But start packing. You'll love it." Driving home, Mandy struggled to hold back tears. Her life felt like it was unraveling. Danny had filed for divorce, hurt, and feeling unappreciated. Lucy seemed indifferent, even hinting that Mandy hadn't been a great mother. Her parents weren't offering solace either. They praised Danny, holding him up as an exemplary husband and father. On top of it all, Edgar's intentions were now glaringly obvious. Danny had warned her about him, claiming Edgar's interest wasn't purely professional. Meanwhile, Danny seemed to be thriving, spending time on a river trip with two bold women who had no qualms about going topless around him. The thought churned Mandy's stomach. If Danny could move on so easily, why couldn't she consider Edgar? He fit the image she'd always wanted: successful, confident, and good-looking. Yet guilt gnawed at her. What would Lucy think? Especially after Mandy had vehemently denied being interested in Edgar. Danny's decision to end their marriage forced her into uncomfortable introspection. Why hadn't he just earned more to secure their family's future? But Lucy's earlier words haunted her. Why push Danny so hard when Mandy made enough for them all? Even her father had called Danny a fantastic husband and father. Mandy felt increasingly isolated in her dissatisfaction. When Danny dropped Lucy off on Sunday evening, her daughter radiated happiness, clearly overjoyed by her weekend. Mandy felt a sting of envy and sadness. Why did Lucy's closeness with her father hurt so much? Shouldn't she be grateful for their bond? "Did your dad rush back to his girlfriend's, or did he have time to talk about our daughter?" Mandy asked sharply. Sensing her mother's tension, Lucy tried to reassure her. "Dad really liked Lisa and Kim, but no, he didn't sleep with them. I'd know. My bedroom door was open all weekend. He wouldn't sneak out, and he wouldn't bring them into the cabin while I was there." Lucy's remark about Mandy's noisy romantic life caught her off guard. "I didn't think we were that loud," Mandy mumbled, embarrassed. "You're not anymore," Lucy quipped with a grin. "But when I was younger, you and Dad were pretty loud. It didn't bother me, though. It actually made me happy to know how much you loved each other." Still flustered, Mandy apologized. "I never meant to disturb you." "You didn't," Lucy replied with a shrug. Even Sarah noticed when she stayed over. She thought it was sweet. Her parents are divorced, you know. By Monday, the turbulence of Mandy's personal life spilled over into her work week. A major machine failure on the factory floor crippled productivity. With Wednesday's management meeting approaching, Mandy braced herself. Agnes Ferguson, ever dependable, would undoubtedly be there, adding more pressure to an already chaotic situation. Agnes had officially passed the day-to-day operations of the business to Remington, yet her sharp instincts and deep involvement ensured she remained a key player in the family enterprise. Her watchful eye on production figures and profit margins never wavered. After listening to the maintenance supervisor's update, she dove straight into her usual incisive questioning. "Steve, what's taking so long to get Machine 27 back to full capacity? It's one of our most reliable assets," she asked, her tone firm. Steve hesitated before replying. "The issue's tricky. The machine runs, but the quality of its output isn't up to standard. 2 workers have been working on it since Monday." Agnes's eyes narrowed. "Is this a new issue? Or something we've seen before?" "Not exactly new," Steve admitted reluctantly. "It's an older model, and similar issues crop up once or twice a year." "Then why is this repair dragging on so much longer than usual? What's changed this time?" Agnes probed further. Shifting uncomfortably, Steve replied, "Well, things are different now. The team is struggling to figure it out." Agnes leaned forward. "Different in what way? What's holding up the repair?" Steve sighed. "We don't have Danny Gallagher anymore. He knew this machine inside out. He could get it back to peak performance in a matter of hours." Agnes remained composed, though her tone turned contemplative. "I see," she murmured. After a pause, her gaze swept across the room. "I couldn't help but notice management awarded itself bonuses this year for our increased profits and production. Did the shop floor employees receive any similar acknowledgement? They're the ones making those profits possible," Remington responded smoothly. "We celebrate employee milestones with appreciation days when we hit monthly targets, things like pizza parties or an occasional barbecue. The team loves it." Agnes raised an eyebrow. "So management gets bonus checks and the workers get pizza? Mandy, did Danny ever share his thoughts on these bonuses?" Mandy hesitated before nodding. "He did mention it. He joked that pizza wasn't exactly motivating enough to take on extra work. In fact, he thought it was more of a disincentive. Remington interjected sharply. That attitude is why he's no longer with us. Ferguson Buffers can't afford employees who aren't fully committed. Agnes's gaze turned steely. Mr. Remington, let me remind you that Danny Gallagher was anything but a poor performer. My late husband often praised him, saying he achieved more in an 8-hour shift than anyone else he'd ever hired. Letting him go was a significant misstep. Mandy appeared taken aback. The realization hit her like a bolt. Had she misjudged Danny all along? Could her parents, the Fergusons, and nearly everyone else have been right about him, while she had been completely mistaken? Turning to Mandy, Agnes's tone softened. Could you ask Danny to call me? I've tried reaching out, but his number seems to have changed. Mandy nodded. Of course, Mrs. Ferguson. My daughter has his new number. I'll make sure she passes it along. Thank you, Agnes replied warmly. She then turned to Remington with a wry smile. It seems the company may have contributed to its own challenges. Not at all, Mrs. Ferguson, Mandy interjected. The issues between Danny and me are personal. Later, Lucy relayed Agnes's message to Danny, who didn't hesitate to call back, respecting both Agnes and her late husband. Thanks for reaching out, Mrs. Ferguson, he began. I hope you're doing well. I heard Remington tried to block my retirement, but fortunately, I was prepared. I would have appreciated your help if needed, but thankfully, it didn't come to that. Danny, you were always a step ahead, Agnes replied warmly. You and your family were important to us. After a brief pause, Agnes asked, would you consider consulting for us? We're having trouble with some machines, and no one knows them better than you. Danny considered for a moment. I can't take on a full job, but I'd be happy to stop by tomorrow for a few hours to see if I can help. Agnes exhaled in relief. That's very generous, Danny, but we'll need to formalize it with a signed contract. Is there anything I can offer as a thank you? A gift card, perhaps? Danny chuckled. Actually, there's one thing. Could you have Mandy invite me? Don't let on that I've already agreed. Just make it seem like her idea. Agnes's tone grew firm. Danny, I won't manipulate Mandy or put her in an awkward position. I understand, Danny said sincerely. Truth is, I miss her. We haven't talked properly since the company picnic. Agnes softened. I see. I'll ask her to call you, but please tread carefully. I think she's beginning to see things differently. Not long after, Danny's phone buzzed. He let it ring a few times before picking up. Danny, it's Mandy. How are you? Hearing her voice made Danny's heart lift. Mandy, this is a pleasant surprise. I was just thinking about you. Is Lucy all right? Is everything okay? Mandy hesitated. Lucy's fine. There's just a small issue. But why were you thinking about me? Danny smiled, his voice warm. I was eating a burger and beans, and it reminded me of your incredible cooking. You're one of the best cooks I've ever known. Do you truly miss my cooking? Mandy asked, her voice heavy with disappointment. I suppose it wasn't enough to keep us together. Danny hesitated before responding. Honestly, there are a few other things I miss. He paused, his tone softening. How have you been doing? Without someone constantly pressuring me to earn more? It's about what you'd expect after being handed divorce papers in front of my colleagues, Mandy replied bitterly. I'm surviving. It's been hard. I'll admit that was a terrible move, Danny confessed. I was angry, and I wanted to hurt you. It was cruel, and I regret it. You deserved better than that. I could have handled things differently too, Mandy said with a sigh. If it had to happen, it shouldn't have been so public. I didn't even realize we were in such a bad place. Was I really so unbearable that divorce was your only solution? Couldn't we have talked it through? Did you ask my opinion when you decided we needed a new house? Danny retorted. Did you consider how I felt about splitting the mortgage or the long hours you spent with Remington? I don't think you ever did. I did listen, Danny, Mandy countered defensively. But it felt like you were avoiding responsibility. You have so much potential, but you seemed content to settle for less. And that's exactly why we're here, Danny replied sharply. I've told you before how my dad missed all the big moments in my life because he was always working. Then he died at 39 from a heart attack. He gave up everything and it cost him his life. I swore I wouldn't do the same, and I made that clear before we got married. I thought I understood, Mandy admitted quietly. But maybe I didn't. I'm still trying to figure it all out. Seeing you with those women after serving me those papers didn't help my perspective. Now you know how it felt for me, Danny said sarcastically. Ever since Remington joined your company, I've heard nothing but praise for him. Then you decide we're buying a bigger house and expect me to cover half the mortgage without even asking my opinion. But you sure asked for Remington's. I won't accept that from my wife, let alone from someone like him. I worked for Ferguson, but they didn't own me, Danny continued. I never once claimed the money I earned while you were in college was just mine, but you treat your income like it's yours alone. For me, everything I earned was ours. That's a fundamental difference between us. I've always been proud of your achievements, Mandy, but I never saw us as competitors. I thought we were partners. I value my free time, especially with Lucy, Danny added. I used to love spending it with you too, but that's gone now. And yes, I admit Edgar crossed a line at that party, Mandy conceded reluctantly. I made a mistake with the house. I assumed you'd just go along with it like always. Buying a house isn't like choosing a paint color, Mandy, Danny replied firmly. I agreed to things that didn't matter much to me, but this was different. Over time, I stopped asking you to join Lucy's games or go camping with me. It was obvious your career came first. I tried to respect that, but you didn't give me the same courtesy. Instead, you criticized my job and my choices. I wasn't going to change who I am to fit your expectations. I never wanted to make you feel that way, Mandy said, her voice wavering. I thought I was doing what was best for us. I never had feelings for Edgar. There was no reason for you to think I'd betray you. Maybe I got it wrong, Danny admitted, but it felt like something was happening. People at work joked about Remington being too close to you, and at first I laughed it off. But eventually I started to doubt. And now? He's running Ferguson into the ground, focused only on short-term gains while burning through resources. He's setting the company up to fail. I'm sure he'll leave once he polishes his resume, and maybe take you with him. That's an unfair and baseless accusation, Mandy snapped. Edgar's done wonders. Production numbers have risen every month since he started. Believe that if you want, at least until he proves me right, Danny said bitterly. I just hope he doesn't take my pension down with him when he leaves. This conversation isn't helping, Mandy said, exasperated. I actually called because Agnes Ferguson asked me to reach out. There's an issue with one of the production machines and the repair crew can't fix it. Can you help? I'll do it, but not for Agnes. For you, Danny replied. I know how much the company's success means to you. I'll come by tomorrow morning, but I'm leaving by 3. Lucy and I have a tennis game. Tennis? Mandy asked, surprised. I never pictured you taking up something like that. If it's a game, I'm all in, Danny said with a grin. You know that. You look good, by the way, Mandy said, remembering how fit and tanned he looked the last time they met. Seems like it's working for you. You look great, too, Danny replied, flashing a cheeky smile. Did you get a boob job? Do they seem bigger than usual? Did you notice that? Mandy asked, her voice carrying a mix of intrigue and disbelief. Danny smirked. I'm surprised you'd think I'd notice, considering how you were surrounded by those 2 gorgeous blondes earlier. Mandy rolled her eyes. Well, have you noticed I've lost weight? Danny nodded thoughtfully. Around your waist, maybe? Yes, mostly from my stomach, she confirmed. It's probably why they stand out more now. I haven't had much of an appetite these days. Don't overdo it, Danny advised, his tone softening. You're stunning just the way you are. Thanks, Danny. That really means a lot, Mandy replied warmly. I'll catch you on the floor tomorrow. Appreciate the help, Danny said, offering a small nod. Agnes will be thrilled when she hears. I'm sure she will. See you tomorrow, Mandy replied, turning to leave. Danny added just before hanging up, make sure Agnes knows I'm doing this as a favor to you. The next morning, Danny stepped into familiar territory at Ferguson's buffers. He explained to Agnes that the persistent problems with the number 27 machine had been resolved. So let me get this straight, Agnes began, watching the machine hum smoothly once again. This thing had been down for days, with no one able to fix it. And you got it running in under 2 hours? It's not something you can teach easily, Danny explained. You have to pay attention, really listen to the machine, feel its rhythm, and make adjustments until it's right. Most repairmen miss that. They don't listen to what the machine is telling them. Agnes shook her head in disbelief. Days of downtime and no progress, and then you come in and solve it in no time. Danny, this place ran so much better when you were around. We really miss you. You and Bill were always good to me, Danny replied. I know he didn't always love my stance on overtime, but my priorities were shaped by watching my dad wear himself out. I wasn't going to repeat that. And I respect that, Agnes said sincerely. You were dedicated while you were here and never took Bill's kindness for granted. If my boys grow up to be like you, I'll consider it a win. Later that day, Agnes dropped by Mandy's office. Keeping her annoyance in check, she walked in to find Edgar Remington lounging casually on Mandy's desk. Danny got the 27 machine running better than ever, Agnes announced. He said you were the reason he came back. Edgar leaned back with a smug smile. Too bad Danny bailed when Mandy really needed him. Agnes stiffened, but decided to stay composed. She knew Danny's feelings for Mandy ran deep, and if she could help mend things, she would. Edgar's remarks, however, grated on her nerves. His arrogance had been a red flag ever since Danny had voiced concerns about him at the company picnic. Fixing Edgar with a sharp look, she said, Your fixation on Danny Gallagher's personal life is not only unprofessional, but veering into harassment. Mandy shouldn't have to put up with your constant disrespect toward her husband. I don't want to hear this kind of nonsense again. Without waiting for a response, Agnes left the room. Edgar muttered under his breath, Touchy, aren't we? Sweet on the loser, and she's the boss. Alone in her office, Mandy mulled over the confrontation. Why had Agnes been so quick to stand up for Danny, while she herself had stayed silent? There was a time when Mandy wouldn't have let anyone badmouth Danny. Yet here she was, letting Edgar's snide remarks slide. A wave of guilt washed over her. Maybe Danny had every reason to be frustrated with her. By the managers' meeting on Wednesday, tensions had only increased. Steve, the maintenance supervisor, reported that the 27 machine was running perfectly. However, some minor issues with other equipment had started cropping up, though overall downtime was still manageable. Edgar seized the moment. There's a conference in Chicago this weekend, he announced. Mandy and I will be attending to explore ways to cut costs and increase sales. I won't be going, Edgar, Mandy said flatly. I already told you that. You did? Edgar feigned innocence. You might want to reconsider. It's a valuable opportunity. I've made my decision, Edgar, Mandy replied firmly. Suit yourself, Edgar sneered. I would have thought our marketing director cared about boosting the company's profits. Ignoring him, Mandy turned to Steve. Have we been following the maintenance schedule for the machines? Steve hesitated. Not entirely. We've skipped some stops to increase production. Agnes raised an eyebrow. What's the point of having a maintenance schedule if it's not being followed? Steve sighed. Danny and your husband designed that schedule years ago, but Mr. Remington directed us to skip every other stop. Well, that's worked wonders, hasn't it? Edgar said sarcastically. Just look at our production numbers. Mandy pressed on. Steve, didn't machine number 14 break down yesterday? What happened? The roller bearings failed and the roller was damaged, Steve explained. We've ordered a replacement, but it won't arrive for a week. Agnes gave a decisive nod. From now on, Steve, stick to the original maintenance schedule. No exceptions. Understood? After the meeting, Edgar stormed into Mandy's office, slamming the door behind him. What the hell was that stunt you pulled in there? He demanded. Mandy reclined in her chair, her gaze icy and unyielding as it landed on Remington. You didn't think to inform me that Chicago was off the table this weekend? That nonsense about the maintenance schedule? It made me look ridiculous. Actually, no. It exposed just how naive I've been. But I'm catching on quickly and I hope it's not too late. Her tone sharpened as she gestured firmly toward the door. Now leave my office. I don't ever want to see you again. Remington, visibly rattled, fired back. You're the fool here. I'm the one in charge. Clear out your desk and get out. You're finished. To his surprise, Mandy's lips curved into a measured, confident smile. Without breaking eye contact, she reached for the intercom. Becky, please send security to my office. The words had barely left her lips when the door opened, revealing Agnes Ferguson flanked by two uniformed men. Mr. Remington, Agnes began crisply, your tenure with this company is over. Collect your belongings and report to HR immediately. These gentlemen will ensure you follow protocol. You can't do this, Remington protested. I've boosted production and made this company more profitable than ever. Agnes remained unmoved. Short-term gains at the expense of morale and stability don't count as success in my book. And frankly, I find you insufferable. Leave, now. As the guards escorted him out, Agnes turned to Mandy with a nod of approval. Thanks for flagging those service issues earlier. More importantly, I appreciate you exposing his misconduct. I suspected he had an inappropriate interest in you, but I never thought he'd go so far as to suggest a trip to Chicago on the company's dime. Mandy nodded solemnly. In a manufacturing company, neglecting maintenance is catastrophic. He had to go. Agnes paused thoughtfully. Do you think there's any chance Danny might return to work here? I know things ended poorly between you two, but we could really use his expertise. Mandy sighed. I've been giving that a lot of thought. I didn't treat him fairly, always expecting him to change, never recognizing how amazing he already was. I'm planning to reach out to him this weekend. Saturday morning, Mandy pulled into the lot near the floatplane dock, where Danny was loading gear into his truck. Their teenage daughter Lucy leaped out of the car and ran to embrace her father, casting a curious glance back at her mother, who lingered by the vehicle. Danny, Mandy called softly, can we talk? I have some things I need to say. Danny, preoccupied, shook his head. Not now, Mandy. I've got a client arriving for a floating trip and I'm behind schedule. Whatever it is, it'll have to wait. He turned to Lucy. Grab your stuff, kiddo. You're joining me on this one, just the two of us. Lucy hesitated. No, Dad. This time it's just the two of you. I'll stay by the pool. Mandy stepped forward. Actually, I'm your client. I booked this excursion and I expect the same treatment as any paying customer. Danny raised an eyebrow, but eventually shrugged. All right. By the end of the day, as they returned to the cabin, the sound of laughter filled the space. Lucy, observing from a corner, couldn't hide her surprise at the lightheartedness between her parents, a tone she hadn't heard in years. I still can't believe you let me drift around that bend with all those people on the shore, Mandy teased. A whole crowd at the boat launch watching me. Danny smirked. I didn't tell you to take off your bikini top. I didn't even know you still had one. You looked pretty smug when all those guys stood there gawking, Mandy shot back. You have a knack for making me feel like a spectacle. Danny chuckled. You're gorgeous. Always have been. What about those blondes who floated with you before? Mandy pressed. How'd they manage to stay covered? They tried, he admitted with a grin, but not very well. From the other room, Lucy's voice rang out. Mom, are you telling me you went topless in public? How am I supposed to face my friends when this gets around? Mandy rolled her eyes. You're the one who brought up those blondes. Don't play innocent now. I said no one saw them topless, Lucy countered, smirking. But I didn't expect you to take it as a dare. Danny raised his hands in mock surrender, laughing. Let's not turn this into a soap opera. I remember floating down the river and that's enough for me. Lucy sighed but accepted the $20 Danny handed her to grab dinner at the diner. As she left, Danny turned to Mandy. So what's your angle here? Mandy hesitated before speaking. I want to rebuild what we've lost, Danny. Not just between us, but everything. Our family, our priorities. I've pushed too hard and I'll stop. I just want you to know how proud I am of you. The next morning, Lucy was at the kitchen table when Mandy walked out of the bedroom wearing one of Danny's shirts. Lucy raised an eyebrow but said nothing. What? Mandy asked defensively. Lucy shrugged. Nothing. Just wondering if this means you and Dad are back together. Mandy paused, then smiled. It means we're trying. There's a lot to work on, but we'll get there. Together. Danny stepped into the room, exhaling deeply, his voice carrying a tone of reflection. I've come to understand that I've been far too set in my ways, he admitted. If wearing a suit and tie occasionally is what it takes to make your mom proud to be seen with me, then I'm willing to do it. She swore I wouldn't regret the effort. Seated nearby, Lucy visibly grimaced. Oh, gross. That's way more detail than I ever needed, Dad, she blurted out, throwing her hands up dramatically. I already had to put up with her meowing and yelping all night long. Danny merely shrugged, clearly unfazed by Lucy's outburst. Well, you'll either have to learn to deal with it or start investing in earplugs, he said with an easy grin. I've decided to return to my old job and have a conversation with Agnes about getting a raise. Your mom's convinced I'll get it, and if she's right, you'd better brace yourself. Her noises won't be stopping anytime soon. If anything, they might just get louder. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.